Of the many hundreds of videos I've made on this channel this year, today's graphic design tutorial shows the most useful and best tips that you can use in your workflows right now. And if you use the content in today's tutorial, your designs will surpass your expectations. And that starts with hooks. Think how you can add something to your design that is unique, that will really help embed itself into the memory of the viewer. Now here's the crucial thing though. It needs to be relevant to the message and also the brief. Let me explain. This bottled water design does it really well. People who buy this will remember the cool concept of that whale on the design. It's a talking point among other people and groups of friends, and it's one way how products spread throughout communities. And then you have this brand here who are selling something as simple as fabric wool. But look at the packaging on this product. It's creative, it's fun, and it's memorable. Now I can pretty much guarantee that without checking, this company sells their products at about double the price of their competitors at the very least. And that's simply because of the packaging alone. Humor is a great way to create a memory hook, just like this bag design right here. It's a unique and fun design, again super memorable, and it's a great way to elevate something like a standard brown bag. And next we have a new way that designs can be memorable or have memory hooks. And that is by being a bit shocking or a bit jarring. This poster gives a lot of room to that shouting head graphic, which, might I add, is basically all mouth and nothing else. This graphic is striking and it will likely be memorable to the viewer. Memory hooks are ever so more important these days due to the amount of design work that the average person consumes every single day online, their smartphones and so on. Now the next tip that I use in my workflows is based around time management, and when you hear it and then use it in your workflows, you realize how much of a game changer it truly is. In every project, before you send your designs to the client, a lot of amateurs fall into a trap. Say for example it's taken you 10 working hours to get to a point where the design looks around 98% finished to you. And when it comes to that remaining 2%, a lot of people, even artists as well as designers, they kind of go a bit wrong there, and that's because they spend way too much time on that final 2%. As designers and creative people, we can often obsess with our creations and keep pushing the finishing point forwards, further and further away out of our reach. Sure, we don't want to send our clients unfinished work, that goes without saying. However, we don't want to be wasting valuable time just overworking or overdoing our design trying to make it perfect. When you become serious with your design career, you'll realize that time is one of the most important assets that you actually have. So that remaining 2% becomes less and less important. And certainly not 10 hours of work important, that's for sure. A portion of those 10 hours could be better spent on another project, getting more clients, or marketing yourself online and so on. Next up, maybe the best way I've ever shown using white space and negative space on a graphic design in real time. Often, but of course not always, an amateur wouldn't consider white space as something that is that important. The amateur will often instinctively want to fill up as much of the white space as possible, thinking that it's just the best approach. But this isn't how 99% of designs should actually be approached, however. A true professional designer understands how white space allows other principles and other elements on a design to operate and function. It's really hugely important. And as you can see on this second design, the viewing experience is more comfortable and we can actually distinctly make out grouped objects that relate to each other. But how does a master designer improve on something that's already functional and acceptable? Now if you look at the pro design, it seems very static, almost as if the viewer is stuck in one spot. However, if we then move and look at the master design, we instinctively start on the left, the bottle gives us forward motion to the right, and then we move through the white space to the next group of objects. And finally, we finish with the social account links in the bottom right. A master level designer knows how to use white space to guide a viewer through the design and take them on a journey. That's the key difference here, and it's how you can master white space. Next, a tip, or shall I say maybe a collection of tips on how to make the best out of your graphic design briefs. Now here I'm using Millernote, but you can use any platform, program, or just simply a piece of paper. So once you take your brief in your hands, or you view it on a screen, examine it and then try and reduce it down to one sentence or one message. So for a poster that needs to bring the dangers of drink driving to the awareness of people, I've got here the reality of drink driving is deadly serious. This is the first step in this hack, but here's exactly why this is so important and so useful. By doing this, we actually set the tone and the direction of our design in relation to the project brief. If we pick out some keywords and some goals from the brief and then condense it down into a message like this, we're on the way to making a supremely useful and effective graphic design solution. Next, we want to focus on emotion, and so jot down some emotional responses that are going to allow your design to properly get the main message across to the viewer. So here we can see that I've chosen emotions that will help drive the point home to the viewer that drink driving is serious, it's deadly, and it's no joke. I want my design to have a shock factor so the message is clear and it stays in the minds of the viewer. The next phase is where things really step up a gear in the process. This is where we think about design techniques that can express the emotional response that we want to get on our design. And here I've just written down 3 to demonstrate. Now I want to have a focal point that is shocking and draws the viewer into my design. I really want to emphasize on a lot of white space to make the message clear and concise, and to perhaps also give a clinical or bleak outlook on my design. This is really driving that message home that drink driving is really serious and it can be really bleak for the people involved. And then I go into color schemes that will perhaps help my design cause the emotional responses in the viewers that I want to deliver with the message. And lastly, we can add imagery to help build up an overall identity of the design to generate ideas. But me personally, as a designer, I don't really find this stage to be that helpful, but we all think and we all design in different ways, of course. As you can see, I have really focused on white space to make the visual communication both striking and clear. The focal point is shocking and suggestive to the message of drink driving, and I've worked in the concept of crossing the line of drinking to then actually driving. Now these are a great set of tips to put into your graphic design process, but they shouldn't be your entire graphic design process. The next tip that I've really started to focus on this year as a graphic designer is actually working backwards on a design. Let me explain. Now take a glance at this design right here, and maybe whilst you're just looking at it, your mouth might start to water a tiny bit. The designers or designer who worked on this design didn't just sit down and just start working. That doesn't happen. Instead, they probably worked backwards on this design. Now before they made a single pixel or vector path, they visualized what the design should be like. Let's jump back to this example again to illustrate the point. Now, some of the goals this design might have had would be to make the viewer have a sense of fresh, real ingredients through the product, and also that it's really sour to the taste. The designers used fresh cuts of real fruit along with ice to give that kind of fresh coolness feeling. The entire design is explosive, bursting out from the center to express that punchy, sour nature of this product. When you know what the end goal is and the message should be for a design, then you can start working your design choices into the artwork itself. We have looked at visual narratives before and why they're important to graphic designers. However, we're now going to look at a real-life case that demonstrates just how crucial and important and useful they can be. Now let's say we're designing something for a website design agency that caters to younger people in their 20s. It's a brand that is playful, it's fun, and it wants to be daring. Basically, it wants to be different. Now we can go about this in many different ways, but a good approach would be to choose a color that is very striking, very bold, and turns heads and grabs attention. A bold, bright red or orange might be a good move here, and that's something that raises the heartbeat and turns heads. But what can we do for typography? Young audiences often suggest sans serif, but here it's based around web design, so it might be something geeky or nerdy. So something perhaps like this. And then to appeal to the tech world, the brand could actually incorporate some retro imagery like you can see here, and then work some kind of daring, playful graphics into the brand identity to relate back to that daring, playful nature. And as you can see, it's all about forming a visual language based around the audience. There are no hugely successful brands or graphic designers who ignore this kind of approach. They just don't exist. So the sooner you think this way and then importantly implement it into your graphic design theory and workflow, the better. Next up is probably my biggest game-changing tip in Adobe Illustrator that I've been using this year. Let's start with this window right here, the navigator window. You might be thinking to yourself, how is this little panel so helpful? Well, trust me, when it comes to large documents like this one right here, it's a true gem. Now I can scroll around my document via this panel as it shows my entire workspace as a sort of preview. Also, I can just click to a certain point, like maybe the last page on my document. It just makes workflows more intuitive and less stressful, especially on these larger documents. So yeah, the navigator panel, open it up and slap it to your sidebar just like this. It will come in handy. Now these are some of the best tips that I'm personally using this year and into the next year as a graphic designer. But if you want to go deeper and gain some more knowledge in this industry, just click that video on screen. And until next time guys, design your future today. Peace.